So my name is Rupa Hadaye. So I work as a UX leader and strategist in a product company. So I have more than 20 years of experience in this UI UX field. Can I actually, okay, I can minimize this. Okay. Uh, okay, my education background is basically I've done Bachelor of Architecture. And of course, I do have a vast industry experience working in this field, applying human-centered design methodologies, and of course, creating delightful experiences. Uh, Along with my education, I do have a CUA certification from HFI, and I'm also PMP certified. Uh, of course, like in my career trajectory, I've worked for service companies as well as product companies. So I've worked for companies like some of the renowned brands like Tech Mahindra, L&T, or Fractal, Accenture, Zycus, right? So all these are the companies for which I have worked. And as you can understand, like long back, of course, the term UX also was not familiar with many of us. But eventually, of course, the awareness has built uh, awareness is there, and now we all at least hear the terms quite often. So let's just meaning understand that what kind of designs we consume in our day-to-day life, right? Like there is a design, like we do see design all around us, right? So we do use mobile apps, we do use web apps, like web applications, then we use actually physical devices also. So I think if you can, like some of you or many of you must be using Spotify, right? This is the mobile app that nowadays we normally use to consume music. Of course, there are various other apps, but due to the space and time limitation, I'm just trying to put together only few of the examples. So, couple of other examples. I think we normally spend a lot of time on Instagram. Of course, like meaning we used to spend a lot of time on Facebook also, but nowadays I think with more and more people spending larger amount of time on Instagram, right? Like I think the younger generation is more on Instagram rather than on Facebook. Uh, of course, like I think every one of us by default do have WhatsApp, right? Irrespective of any device or any technology platform that we use, right? Whether it's an Android platform that we are consuming or we are using iOS platform. So WhatsApp has become like a key ingredient in our day-to-day life, right? And it's an app which we are using so extensively that we don't even realize that uh, like how much time we spend on it. And then without WhatsApp, I think it will become a tough, right? For it will become too challenging for all of us to communicate with others. I think, and WhatsApp has become so integral part of our daily lives. I think, yes, nowadays we are spending like we are spending extensive amount of time on online e-commerce apps, right? Like there is Amazon, there's eBay, there's Mintra, whatever, Flipkart, and so many other apps are also there. So these are the e-commerce apps that we are using, and they are popular. And of course, they are popular or famous because of some reasons, right? Like we'll understand the reasons, but I'm just in general trying to give you a example of like the apps, extensive apps that we are using, right, in our day-to-day life. Of course, we do have physical devices that we also interact with. So there's Alexa is there, then we do have I think Amazon Fire Stick remote also that we use, right? So I think all these designs that I have put together, they are just some of them. But I think the key ingredient in all of these designs is the best ingredient that we can speak of is the user experience. And I think who else can talk about user experience design? Uh, Not only just physical devices, I think we do have so many apps, like the products that we use in our day-to-day life. Like there's Google Gmail, then Google app, Google Google Map, then we have Google Calendar and various other like Google Drive also. So all these are apps which are created by Google, and these apps are like very seamlessly actually helping us to complete our tasks. and they are trying to build the productivity also, like they are trying to enhance the productivity of all of us. So we don't even realize that whether these apps are consistent or not, and how effective they are working in the background to to help us complete the task. And I think the key ingredient that I spoke of, the user experience design, uh, which is the user experience design term became very popular since Apple products started rolling out in the market and everyone started consuming them, right? So nowadays, I think in India also, most of the users do have Apple devices, right? We do use MacBooks. Some of us do have iPhones. Then we do have smartwatches also. So smartwatches also have become, I think, the integral part of our lives nowadays. Of course, there are like iPods and there are other devices like speakers or remote controls that we use. There are even like there are bands which we use to track our health statistics and uh, various other things, right? Like the sleep pattern and various other things, right? So like I hope you understand that these apps that we are using as a user, of course they are trying to fulfill our needs. The second part is they are actually making us happy, right? Eventually after using such products, what is the sense of feeling or emotion that we derive? The sense of feeling or emotion that we derive is, I think some of us feel happy while using them. Like I don't know, on Instagram and Facebook we are spending so much time we don't even realize the device usage that we have, right? And maybe the family members need to tell us to stop the usage and take a break, right, from all such devices. So I think there's a lot that we consume in our day-to-day lives. And in terms of design, so I haven't really put examples of designs that we consume in terms of print media or maps, directions, or signage that we see in our day-to-day life, right? Since the webinar is more about the UX design, I'm trying to put together, meaning I'm trying to show only the most of the digital devices and the online UI design that we see, right, in our day-to-day life. Maybe stop. I hope my screen is visible, right, to all of you.
Yes, ma'am, it's visible.
Okay, so sorry, like because of the break. So, meaning I think the example that I was trying to give was a simple example of a Vodafone user trying to pay his or her bill, right? So as a user we may have different touch points, right? Basically we may go to a gallery or we may use web mobile apps, and we may talk to the call center, right? So we may actually have end up having positive or negative experience. So based on our experiences we are going to promote Vodafone as a brand to our friends or to our family accordingly, right? Like if I have a negative experience, I may not really promote Vodafone. And in general, as a user, if the service is poor, that also could be another reason, another deciding factor for me to either promote or be a loyalist or a loyal customer of Vodafone or not. So it's a simple example which tells us that as a user, we are likely to receive experiences from different touch points and different platforms, and which will help us form an opinion about that brand or that company or organization. And basically as a user, like the kind of emotion that I will have or I'll carry about that brand basically tells me that whether the user experience was positive or negative, right? So this was just one of the examples that I shared, but of course there could be many more. So why we are actually trying to be in the UI UX field? Like what is exactly a factor that will be a deciding factor for all of us? Me for you guys to be in the UI UX UI UX field. So of course, I think with the technology advancement, we do have a lot of websites, right? There are around more than 1.83 billion websites that are currently there. Overall, mobile app users have been more than 4 billion, right? Uh, And these apps are available, of course, on various platforms, right? Like Android and iOS platforms. So we can very well say that globally there are more than 4 billion users who are using internet. And if we have to ask this simple question, like who's responsible for designing the visual interactive elements of all these websites and apps, I think the conclusion that is designers, because these designers are making sure that they not only create a great experience, but they create experiences which are trying to give meaning more accessible accessible, inclusive, and intuitive experiences. Of course, these terms we can like I can help you understand these terms. So intuitive is like easy to understand. So can I actually understand something easily? Like the moment I come to a website, can I understand that website and the navigation easily or not? Inclusive is basically okay, can I include all the users, like whether the design is very inclusive or it actually poses some barriers among the users. Accessible is like okay, users irrespective of their physical abilities, can they consume the design? So not only accessibility means only disabled users, it can be users with low internet bandwidth or users which are maybe stuck in some situation where they both the hands are not free, right? So couple of such scenarios are there. So basically the job of UI UX designer is to make sure to build a delightful experiences or engaging experiences. And like there's another reason that we have to consider a UX career. Basically, of course, like there are so many surveys that are available. So LinkedIn also has included a recent survey, like what could be the top 10 skills which would be required by 2025, right? So UX design, like a product development is the skill, which includes UX design as an important skill into it. So LinkedIn also has added that as part of the survey. You can check that. Of course, Coursera has mentioned UX is one of the 7 high income skills, right? Which is worth learning in 2023. So I think the reason for all of you to consider UX career is definitely not only just because of high income, there are other factors also. So what could be the other factors? So what why do we consider UI or UX as a good career choice? Of course, the first and foremost is the this is the high impact area, right? So suppose as a designer, if I work for a product and that product is being used by so many users, end users, the kind of impact I can have on the users lives, right, that will be tremendous. And of course design teams are valued for their impact, and the opportunities that as a designer we have are enormous. Like basically this market is growing since the technology is also advancing. There's a great need to have designers with a great sense of meaning, who understand design well and who can actually design for various scenarios where various user personas, right? uh, so not only just top companies are hiring UX design skill set, there are so many startups and product companies like who are just thinking to release something in the market, like maybe a small MVP, or they do have a couple of business ideas which they want to resonate with users, right? So these companies also are on a lookout, and they are trying to hire designers with a great sense of UX design. So I think that's why, meaning there's a high demand for UX designers in the field. This field is basically a multidisciplinary field, basically, which means that so many skill sets come together, right? Like this field doesn't expect you to only have a certain background, right? Certain education background. So people or designers have actually had multiple different backgrounds. So for example, there are engineers, there are people from psychology field, behavioral science field, or there are visual designers, graphic designers who have come in, and they, so even a person like me, there are architects also, there are product designers also, industrial designers who have come in and they have explored this field, and they have been successfully working in this field. So this field basically has a low barrier to entry, right? So there are no prerequisites in the sense, not a definite checklist that, okay, you need to have these kind of educational backgrounds, then only you can enter UX. So I think if, like, of course we'll learn how we can get into the UX field in a structured manner, but just that this is one of the factors in making this field so lucrative and so uh, in demand because of having low barrier to entry. Of course, as a UX designer, we can work in a remote manner. So some of the companies don't expect us to be in the office premises and work with other team members. We can work in a remote manner. We can even work as a freelancer, right? So there's a great scope for freelancers as well. And UX designers are great freelancers also. Like some of us, like some of my friends, they do have meaning they make sure that they earn high income through their freelancing work. So that is another biggest I would say area of interest for all of us. Then as I said, like so many startups are coming, and every organization is nowadays so I think so matured and so aware about how UX can add value, right? And why UX is important. So I think more and more organizations and they are realizing the value, and that is why they're hiring more of UX designers. Of course, there's, as I said, like as Coursera has mentioned UX as one of the high income skills. So salary satisfaction is also another factor, which is a big consideration for so many professionals who want to come into this field. Uh, of course, like if we have creativity, if we have a zest for innovation, we can make a great impact. We can actually design something which will be helpful for so many users, and even it can help business generate revenue, right? So some of these, like I have listed the top factors which can help you understand why UX is the most in demand field, and why so many professionals are switching from their individual fields and coming into the UX field. So what exactly UX designers do, right? Like, of course, meaning we understand that we have to make delightful experiences, but how it can be achieved. So UX designers basically are responsible for making products, services, and technologies intuitive, so easy to understand, easy to comprehend, and accessible to the users. And I think the simple thing that we all uh, do in UX design field is we make the technology um easily accessible for our users, right? So irrespective of the technology, the development platform that goes into the background, we try and humanize the technology. We try and humanize the product or the service uh, for our users. And we do understand the market. We do understand who is the end user. So we try and research about the end users for which we are designing. We also understand the business angle, we understand the technology angle, and then we try and do the strategy part, design part, and also we try and sync with the development part also. So UX designers kind of, we wear multiple hats at times depending on what phase the product is into. And our work basically helps companies understand and fulfill the needs of the users, right, in the best possible manner. So every organization, every product, they do have their business goals and objectives, right? So some products need to beat the competition. Some products need to, of course, all the products would like to have more and more revenue generated, right? So eventually, this is possible through UX design field. There's a difference between UX and UI, but meaning just quickly, if I have to explain this, so UX is user experience, UI is user interface. A UX designer basically applies the human first approach. So what is human first approach? For us, UX user is at the center of our design lifecycle. We would design something for the user only after understanding the user needs and the user's aspirations, motivations, and pain areas. So for us, the end user is the ultimate truth, right? So we do call it like a user-centered design or a human-centered design, right? So UX designers would take the human-first approach. For UI designers, of course, they are very, very well aware about the human-first approach, but their focus is more onto the aesthetic part of the design. So they will apply more of visual design principles to come up with more aesthetically pleasing product, right? So UX designer may work for digital and physical products. For UI designers may work for mainly digital products, but of course, like there are a couple of other scenarios where the UI designers also will come into picture. We UX designer works on the interaction design, basically how the flow has to be, right? Like how can we best design the user experience? Like the moment the user enters into the application, the user is likely to take a couple of steps, right, in order to complete a task. So how can we make that flow smooth, or how can we make that experience seamless, right? So how can we actually navigate the user from one place to another in a simple manner, and we can actually build an information architecture. So I think all these terms we can learn when we start working in a UX field. But basically, I think simple information architecture is the science of structuring the information within the app or within the product. So how best we can do that? So UX designer basically focuses on building the efficient information architecture. The UX designer, the core strength of a UX designer lies in creating wireframes, prototypes, and conducting research. So a UX designer needs to be like having a research skill sets, also an analytical skill set. UI designer who mainly works on the UI, that the actual front end part of the design. So he or she needs to be good at the visual design aspect. Uh, the the designer here is more likely to work in terms of selecting color palettes, selecting fonts, then what kind of animations need to be there, what kind of images I should be using to create this app, right? So basically, this designer is going to plan the visual and the aesthetic part of the app, and he'll be expert in applying, I think, the visual design aspect, like expert in creating mockups, graphics, and layouts, right? Like maybe how the app should work in a responsive manner, like irrespective of whether it's a tablet, mobile, or web, how the experience needs to be consistent. So UX and UI, I think the terms are slightly different, but one can go and work in any field depending on the preference or the skill set that we build, right, eventually. And what kind of skills are required, right? I think, of course, we all understand from the fact that design is the skill that we all would be learning or would be acquiring primarily, but there are other skills which are very, very important from the industry perspective. So there are a couple of soft skills which we need to acquire. So something called as, like, of course, collaboration is a key for a, in order to come up with a successful UX design. We need to have interpersonal skills, and we need to be comfortable working with teams, like other teams, brainstorming with other teams, doing ideations, right? Like if I have to design something, I may not really come up with a perfect solution in first go, right? I'll have to work with other team members, discuss my ideas, share and throw back my ideas with other team members. Like they could be product managers, they could be UI developers, or they could be marketing team members who could be in the conference room with me, right? So I have to speak to them, I have to talk to them. The other important skill set, soft skill that as a UX designer, we all need to have is empathy. So what is empathy? We need to understand the user very well, right? Like I can't, like now, like I can be in the shoes of users to some extent, meaning if I can relate with the user, that will be helpful for me. But the empathy factor can be developed when I do research, right? Like when I see the actual user working in the field, I can develop empathy. There's curiosity that is needed. So we need to observe things around us, and we need to observe how things can be made better, right? Like how can we optimize a flow? If currently there's a process which is um, a lengthy process, can we reduce the number of steps? Can we reduce the number of clicks? Can we reduce the page scroll, right? Like some of the factors which we can keep understanding and keep improving or enhancing, right? Critical thinking is another factor. Of course, like I think that that is needed for many of the fields now. But of course, we have to think of various options. We have to critically see which option would work, right? In this scenario, there are industry specific skills that we have to acquire. So as a UX designer, we need to learn how best we can do wireframing, how best we can come up with prototypes, how we can demonstrate them to the senior leadership or to the other team members. There are sometimes a UX person is required to do UX writing also, though it's a separate skill set, but a person needs to have uh, a good understanding about what kind of writing skills, in the sense what would make sense, right? What could be the content of this web app or mobile app, right? So UX writing is another skill set. Visual communication and UI definitely a must to have a skill set which the hiring organizations expect from a UX designer. Like having a good sense of visual, right? Like we need to have a good sense of colors, typography, animations, images, and so what kind of contrast we can think of, how we can balance the visual aspect of our mobile app. Then user testing. So of course, like this particular technique we can learn in detail separately, but just that our designs need to be tested with actual users to know the feedback, right? Whether they understand our designs or not. Are they really comfortable navigating within our design, or do they feel lost, or they feel confused, right? Like this can be made evident only after testing with users. So once we test our design solutions with users, we understand through their feedback whether the designs are making sense or whether they align with their mental model or not. So there are some crossover skills, like maybe I would say hybrid skills, but nowadays it's very important to have a business acumen, in the sense uh, just having design skills, prototyping skills are not enough. We need to understand the business as well, because how the design solution fits into the entire landscape of business, that also, meaning that high level picture needs to be clear to the designer, so that the designer can add more value, right? Meaning we can work in silos, but that may not really help achieve the larger goal of the business, right, for the organization. We need to have research skills and analysis kind of skills also, because we generally gather a lot of data through user research. We have to analyze the patterns, the key objectives or the key trends, right? So that is important. Like analytics is an important skill. Customer service, of course, like we need to understand the users and the feedback that we receive through various channels. So if a UX designer knows coding, if the UX designer knows development aspect, that also is a value add, because then the UX designer can balance the technology aspect and the user needs aspect, right? So though it is not mandatory to learn the coding or the UI development platform related guidelines, I mean, it's not really needed to learn the coding languages, but it's good to have, because then while talking to the developers, we can have a smooth conversations, we can understand their challenges, and we can contribute in a better manner. So where all UX designers are working, UX designers are required in all domains and all fields. So most of the UX designers are currently working in computer and software field. There are other fields where UX designers play an pivotal role or important role. Something called as finance, banking, and insurance is like another domain, because nowadays I think technology is like omnipresent, right? Like we do have technology in our hand. Through our mobile phone we are consuming it. So irrespective of any domain, UX designer has to play a crucial role, right? So there are consulting agencies also which hire UX designers. Education industry also hires UX designers. Then there are self-employed UX designers or freelancers. There are government agencies also which require UX designers. And of course, I think we do a lot of growth in healthcare, medical, social service kind of a field where UX designers are needed. Uh, so I was just talking about a couple of fields or domains where the UX skill set is required. Of course, this doesn't really cover all the domains, because I think nowadays we do have AI being percolated in all the domains, right? So of course, like there are so many niche fields wherein the UX designers still can contribute a lot. Uh, so just that, like why every company thinks of putting some money in UX design skill set, because of course there's a great ROI, return on investment. So I think generally as a rule of thumb, it's been studied that if if somebody invests $1, like if an organization is investing just $1 in UX skill set, they are likely to get $100 in return, right? Even similarly, what kind of change the UX would bring in. So if there are design centric companies and there are non-design centric companies, of course, what the study has observed that the 10-year stock prices, they have grown almost 228% because of uh, just with the existence of design skill set in those companies. And overall, the organization were design centric. They were actually investing lot of efforts and funds into getting a UX practice, which was meaning not only getting the UX practice on board, but also having a more matured skill set, which could contribute to lot many business areas, right? So that's the impact of UX. I think there are skills which I spoke of, but I think just a survey which was recently, like a survey finding which was recently published. So of course the kind of skill sets, as even Manjunath mentioned, there's no entry criteria to actually come into this UX field. There are skills which we can acquire, which we can learn, having a structured training in place, like the way Guvi trainings are conducted and the programs are designed. So the effective skills that we all would be acquiring as part of UX design UX design course. So I think the communication plays an important role, because we need to present our ideas, we need to exchange thoughts with other interdisciplinary teams. We need to even speak at times to the CEOs and the CFOs, right, and convince them about some particular design solutions. So communication plays an important role. Definitely, problem solving is the next skill set which we try and develop uh, uh, by working on multiple project activities and doing lot many hands-on activities. Uh, we need to have, as a UX designers, a good sense of UX design principles, because every platform does have its own principles and own guidelines which we have to stick to. And of course we can enhance the UX only after understanding the basic core guidelines of those platforms. We need to be good at collaboration. We can also learn the research skills, interviewing skills, because they help us a lot in terms of understanding insights about the actual users. Of course, the design tools play an important role in translating the user needs into the actual solutions. So these designs tools could be any tool like Figma, XD, Sketch, and a couple of other tools are there. So whatever the design tools that are prevalently being used in the market, we can learn them. We need to have a great sense of storytelling, because I think we have learned about the user, but how we demonstrate the design solution in a more storytelling fashion, right? That also is an important thing, which a skill which we can acquire. Of course, presentation skills are very much required, but I think all these skills we do have in us. It's just a matter of practice and confidence that we can develop on top of them. And what does a UX design career progression look like, right? So someone really, meaning as a fresher, we start with something like a UX designer job title. So these job titles also are not fixed. They keep changing, and based on the industry, the job titles also vary a lot. But I think just to give a sense of how a career progression happens, we start with something called as a UX designer and a mid-level, like a more matured UX designer. The Based on whether the person wants to be a, a specialist or a generalist, the career progression can happen in both the manners. Like a person can eventually become a team lead, UX manager, UX director, and maybe go into this, like go and actually sit next to the C-suite kind of stakeholders, right? So eventually we can be part of a like a experienced team, right? Like a VP of experience or chief design officer. The other route, or maybe in a product industry, a UX designer can move up the career ladder by becoming, meaning there are job titles like product designers also, which are prevalently used in this industry. So product designer can become like a senior product designer and a principal product designer. And likewise, we can join the high end bracket of the any organization that we have. And I'll tell you, like, of course, it's possible, the career map that I'm showing, I have seen my own friends or even like some of the industry experts, they started from scratch, and they've kind of started learning about this field and applying that knowledge in the actual project work. And of course, we can learn a lot through various other channels as well. uh, so in general, how one can become a UX designer, we need to be learning about the design principles or the design fundamentals, right? Like we need to know what exactly is a good design all about, like what principles to follow to make a design look good or successful, right? There are tools that we can learn. There are projects that we have to definitely put our thought into it. Like how do we really do problem solving? That is important. Uh, and the next step is to develop a portfolio. So I think when we go for an hiring, it's essential to have a very prominent portfolio, meaning which can demonstrate the work which we have done, and it can give a flavor of our skill set also to the hiring team, right? Like as a UX designer, how I have done the problem solving, how I have basically translated the user pain areas into actual solutions or features, right? So all that transformation needs to become evident, and that is evident through a design portfolio, right? Like the case studies give a good flavor of our work to the hiring team members. uh, all this is possible, I think. Individually we can do self study, but I think the best option is to join a course like maybe a Guvi program, wherein we can not only just complete the certification, but we can get placements also. And once we complete the coursework, we can apply to the various design jobs. So basically, a person who's not really coming from a design field and switching to a UX design field can start understanding about this field through a structured course, complete a certification, and then complete, like, try and create a portfolio which can be demonstrable to the outside audience, and of course apply to various jobs. uh, like, I think I have explained this, but in general, to make a successful product, there are a couple of frameworks that we normally use. So design thinking is a framework which is widely used in the industry. So basically, how we can understand the unmet needs of the users, right? How we can empathize with them, how can we define the problem statement well? Because I think in order to come up with the final solution, it's important to know what the real problem is. We can ideate on the thoughts that, okay, what would work well? Like which is a good idea, which is a bad idea, which idea can actually be taken into a finalization stage. We can create couple of prototypes using these design tools, or even hand-drawn paper sketches also work like a low fidelity prototypes. Then we can actually test these prototypes with the actual users. So I think design thinking framework basically helps us do problem solving and design successful products, right? In the larger run. What kind of deliverables we normally come up with? So there are many deliverables that actually come in, that we try and create, but the most frequent ones are, like, we generally define the user persona, like the actual end users demographics and characteristics. We come up with user flow experience map prototypes, we do a competitive studies, we do research, we do surveys, we do usability testing, then we come up with reports, then we come up with information architectures, final visual design, and prototypes. And we even hand over our designs to the development teams, right? So, um, as I said, like there are a couple of steps which I mentioned earlier in earlier slides. So, just to learn about this field, like if you are really interested in getting into this field, what we have to really do is take a proper course or a certification, attend boot camps, attend workshops, and these structure courses will help us understand the concepts of this design field, learn the tools and the technologies, and help us network with other designers as well. Because we get to learn a lot from our fellow team members and from our experts or mentors, right? So the learning can happen a lot through collaboration. We can, of course, we can read industry blogs, publications. There is social media, there are YouTube channels which we can follow, and which we can um, which we can view to get the better understanding about the latest design trends and best practices. uh, of course, this field uh, requires you to experiment with new design tools and technologies. So I think as a designer, the courses or the programs that we enroll into, they give us a confidence that irrespective of any design tool, I'll be able to translate or I'll be able to change the pain area, user's pain area into actual solution, right? So we do experiment with couple of tools like how we will do mind maps, how we will do affinity diagrams and all this. So these are couple of techniques that we use. When we create a UX portfolio, right, there are some aspects which we have to take care of. Like we generally try and demonstrate the best work to the hiring team. So we have to select the projects which will make sense, which will demonstrate the best side or the best skill set, like which will demonstrate the creativity, problem solving, or how we have actually used the tool in an effective manner, right? Like what kind of interactions I have added. We can even tailor the uh, there's a typo, but we can tailor the portfolio to as per the job requirements or the job profile that is there. So for example, if I'm actually applying to a healthcare job, I have to maybe pick and choose case studies which would make sense for the healthcare industry, right? So in order to make a successful portfolio, I think it's the key is to pick up the relevant projects. We need to actually showcase the process, right? So hiring team or the usually the decision makers, they are not just interested in knowing the final solution, they are trying to understand how you have actually followed the process, right? What's the journey that you have taken to reach to the final destination? So it's important to include those processes, those in between stages, those like unfinished diagrams, unfinished sketches as part of the case studies also. So generally, like some designers, they try and avoid the intermediate stages. They want to just showcase the final design solution. But I think it's essential to include the in between stages and the brainstorming or ideation stages also, to give an employer a sense of how you do a how you actually do a work in a real life scenario. When we actually present a portfolio, we have to make it like we have to make a portfolio either on a through an online medium, or we can make it offline. But we have to make it really clear, simple enough to navigate, so that you anyone can navigate within it, right? Of course, with every field there are a couple of challenges. In UX also there are challenges, and I think those challenges can be dealt with. So of course the market is very competitive, but the market has huge demand for UX roles. So we have to leverage our best skills and try and put together the best case studies in order to, I think, get the best job offers. So we have to make use of that competitive market. Sometimes the roles are fuzzy, right? As I said, like the job titles do vary, but like we can try and understand the job titles in detail and try and ask the hiring team couple of questions to get clarity, right? So it may so happen that I'm called a UX designer, but my friend is called a product designer. So whether like, do I feel inferior or do I feel like better about it, right? So all these can be just discussed. Like over a period of time, you can realize that the job titles are sometimes uh, they are there, but in reality maybe the work that everyone, like the person is expected to do may be same, like a product designer and a UX designer. Maybe they both do the same kind of work, and just that because of the industry they are being called as either UX person or a product designer. Of course, the technology landscape also poses a challenge for all the designers to learn about that technology, because of course we had web as a predominant technology earlier, then we had mobile. Nowadays we do have voice technology, AR, VR, and even like there could be variables, right? Like I can have a touch interactions also. So which technology changes, I have to learn the new interaction ways of interaction principles and design best practices also. So that also is an essential thing. Of course, analytics and AI has kind of spread its, like it's there in nowadays in every industry. So how we can make use of analytics and AI to actually make our design solutions better, that also is a challenge that we can learn to cope up with. Sometimes yes, like it's little tough to get a leadership buy-in, but it can be done through conversations, through effective communications with the, like when we show results, I think that time the senior leadership kind of gets a confidence that okay, UX team or the design team is adding a value, right? And of course, like sometimes design field is a field wherein it's difficult to measure the success. So of course there are metrics which we normally follow to measure the success of any design solution or any UX design activity that we do. But sometimes like we have to educate people, we have to evangelize on that to make sense, right? So I think just quickly, I have tried to summarize many things, but I know it's a very short duration to talk about UX. But in general, like I think I'll feel free to ask any questions if you have, whether about UX or whether like any questions about the course, Guvi course or program. If you want to talk about, you can ask them. Yeah. So I just want to like maybe this is it from my side. Like I could have gone in depth, but I thought that maybe as a like as a first time lecture, I don't want to really confuse you with too many UX terms. But I would say like maybe just to summarize, I would say this field has, meaning personally, has given me immense satisfaction and immense exposure about the various design problems that I have dealt with, and it gives me an immense sense of learning also at times, because even as a person, as a professional, when I look back to my own design solutions, like which I had created maybe few years back, I do see enhancement opportunities in them also. So as a UX designer, we need to have a learning mindset. I think that's the key, or that basically helps us succeed in this field. So I think that's it from me. um, if you have any questions, just feel free to kind of ask, yeah, in the chat.